In 1947, which was his first year, April 15th, 1947 was the first game that a man of color was permitted to play in Major League Baseball. And I was almost 7. I was born in 1940, before the start of the Second World War. You're all relatively young people in here, and there was actually a time before television existed, or before there was air conditioning. And yes, we used to listen to the radio. And Lonnie and Seth would say to me, "But what did you look at?" We visualized what we heard. And there was a time before Pearl Harbor. And there was a time before we entered a war in Europe. And each of us remembers some of the most significant points in our lives. Obviously, for me, the day that Kennedy was shot, working in New York City in November of 1963. But I also remember the day Roosevelt died. And my mother, because my father was in the war, standing with other women around the radio, listening to the news of Roosevelt dying, who was everybody's father at that time in 1944. I remember my father coming home from the war, seeing him standing in his uniform. He was an officer. He ran an Army field medical hospital. He was a doctor. He was in the D-Day invasion, in the Battle of the Bulge, wounded in Germany just before the war ended, had a disability check of $29 a month until the day that he died. He barely escaped the Holocaust, losing his mother and his 3 sisters and their husbands and their children in it, and came to America at the end of 1938 to live with family that had come here at the turn of the century to escape the anti-Semitism of the czars and all of Eastern Europe. And America was this incredible country of opportunity and freedom. And here was this magical man whose skin was dark, which in Brooklyn we didn't see. We were all minorities. We were all a melting pot of people of different faiths, different nationalities, different origins. But this man overcame the most difficult thing. If I walked into a room, nobody paid attention. When a person of color walks into a room, everyone sees a person of color. When we achieve and reach the point that when a person of color walks into a room and all we see is a man or a woman, that is the day we hope to achieve. And that was what Jackie Robinson always wanted. So his example to me of overcoming a quota system when I was applying to college, that the colleges would only take 7% of their student body as Jews, or a certain percentage of people of color, or a certain number of people who were of Asian origin, or a certain number of people who practiced the Muslim faith. Or when I graduated from college and the recruiters came around and there was a list of those companies that wouldn't hire Jews, and so you shouldn't even bother to interview with them. Or when I was a banker and I headed a division and now I was entitled to a country club membership, but none of the clubs would take Jews. Those things don't exist today, in large part. But a lot of it doesn't exist because one man had the courage to say that if you're different in any way, it doesn't make any difference. We're all people, regardless of color, regardless of religion, and regardless of what country we may have come from. Everybody in our country, other than the Native American, is from somewhere else. And in today's world, we should never forget that. As a young child, I walked with this extraordinary man who was carved out of granite. I'd wait for him on the street corner show that Ebbets Field picture. I'd wait for him over here on this corner. This was Bedford Avenue. This was Sullivan Place. The row house I lived in was a half a block up, closer to Rogers Avenue. And there were cars parked here. And Jackie Robinson would drive down Bedford Avenue, stop here in blue Chrysler. Might be 1947, 48, 49, 1950. And I'd wait, cross the street, and walk with him all the way down Sullivan Place. A little boy looking up at this man carved out of granite to this doorway, which was the player's entrance. I did that until I was 15 years old. He would say, "Call me Jackie." And I would look at him and I would say, "You couldn't call God by his first name." It's an image that has stayed with me. I'll be 80 in July, all these years. An extraordinary feeling. His strength and the agreement that he had with Branch Rickey, who was the general manager of the Brooklyn Dodgers at the time, who made the great decision to bring him in, was that he couldn't fight back. No matter what they said to him, no matter how many baseballs were thrown at his head, no matter how many times people would slide into the position he was playing with their spikes high, he just had to smile. And he walked away. No matter the racial epithet that was shouted at him from the stands in cities like Philadelphia or St. Louis, he just couldn't respond. But he had to do his job. And he did. And he was Rookie of the Year in 1947, and he was the most valuable player and won the batting championship in the National League in 1949. I got to see him later. He died in 1972. He was just 52 years old. He was a very severe diabetic. I was in my 30s. And he was a Republican. And believe it or not, the Republican Party in those years had a liberal wing. It was people like Jacob Javits, the great senator from New York. The Javits Center is named after him. John Lindsay, who was a congressman from what was called the Silk Stocking District and then was mayor of New York City. And then Nelson Rockefeller, who was governor of New York and then became vice president after Nixon resigned and Ford became president. And the existing vice president at that time, who was the former Baltimorean, had to resign because of some bad things that he did. But between Rockefeller, Javits, and Lindsay, you had an extraordinary section and formation of the Liberal Party. And at that time, the Democratic Party was controlled by what was called Tammany Hall and really did not welcome new people, and Robinson naturally gravitated towards it. And a mutual friend said, "I remember you knew Jackie Robinson as a child. Would you like to see him?" And we went into an office building in Midtown Manhattan, took an elevator up to a Rockefeller fundraising area. And there he was, seated. He had white hair, but his face was unmistakable. And I was introduced to him, and I said, "Mr. Robinson, do you remember a little boy who used to wait for you on the corner of Sullivan Place and Bedford Avenue to walk you to the players' entrance?" And he said, "Of course I do." And I said, "That was me." And Jackie Robinson remembered me.